Okay, so let's start with this sample exception handling. Let's call it like this, exception handling. So I did not check here. See, did you notice that I just unchecked this create main class because I don't want to do that. Since I'm going to be using like this empty one, I'm going just to use a new JFrame. So the JFrame, I'm going to put it, I don't know, test exceptions. Okay, so this is going to serve the two purposes of like using the graphical user interface and then using exceptions. We can use exception handling with or without swing, but I'm just going to use that in swing, so you can just be more comfortable using some applications using the swing. Okay, first of all, we need to have some kind of a label just to display something, and then some kind of a button, and let's put a text field. Okay, what do you want us to do? Let's just do some kind of verification. Oh, you know what? I just remember that we had already. You have this find hidden number. Remember this find hidden number project? So this one, yes. When you just had to, when you put some kind of a number and then you put something and then you press enter, this is too high or too low or still too high. This is too low, so this is between 12, and so we can find like what's something in the middle. Let's say 19. Too high, so 15. Too low, 18 or 17. Too low, 18, and that's the hidden number. Well, it can be better because you can find the hidden number. It's not showing up clearly. Okay, what if somebody, you said, just put some kind of letters there? We were just using this error, and if you look at the code, the source code for that, we know that we had this check number, and then if there was this number that was not respecting some condition, this is inside of a try, so if there's a problem, this is going to be thrown, and this is going to be thrown as an exception because of this thing here. This is what can make things go wrong, because everything here doesn't seem to have some kind of reason why this might give us an exception. The other code is nothing that can give us an exception. Do you agree with that? Nothing seems to have been giving us any exception except this parse int, because this parse int can, if you look at this thing, this is the parse int, a public static int, parse int, it takes a string, and then check this thing. Throws number format exception. What does these throws mean? These throws mean that this method, when it was designed and it informs those who are going to use it that you have to be careful, because this is going to generate some exceptions sometimes. Which times? Well, if there's some kind of exception related to the number format. And that's why, actually, if you remove this try catch, I just remove the try catch, right? So I have this if here, and this is an if, something is missing, this is the else, and then why isn't this? Let me just go to source format. Yes. And I'm going to do something more interesting in the tools. This is just like between parentheses, tools options. Some in the editor on save, I want from everything to reformat all the lines and remove trailing space from all the lines. So this is going to be every time if I do something like some saving, if I do some changes of the format and everything, as soon as I press Ctrl S, it's going to go and do this source format for me, so I don't have to always format. So that's the one of the good things. But now if you can see here, this thing here, now I just removed the exceptions from being thrown out here. So the problem now is that this can generate an exception because this part is throwing exception, and then I'm not catching it. But this check number, when is it used? If I just select this, I can see that it's used whenever I click on this button, action performed. If I click on the button, or if the text field action performed is done. Did you notice why why am I having these two places? One when I click. So if I click, for example, this button, it's going to do the verification. If I don't click on the button, but then, for example, I just type here and then press enter, I did not click. Well, this is also doing the verification. So the verification is done in two different places. When I click on the button, or when I'm pressing the enter key. And notice now this thing here, because I have an exception. Why? Because I'm trying to convert this text, this empty text, to a number, and this empty text cannot be a number. So that's why I have this kind of problem. It says this was find hidden number. This is the name of the class, and this is the name of the method, check number. If I click on here, I can see that this is the line that created that generated the exception. So what the solution? Well, basically I can just put these into a try catch. Just with NetBeans, you can just select something and then you can say surround with, and then surround with try catch here. So which means it's going to put everything here into try catch. And look here, it selected something for me. Number format exception. I did not select it. Where did it get it from? Well, basically because it went to see among this here which one can generate an exception. It saw that, oh, this parse int can generate an exception. What kind of exception? Number format exception. So now it tells me, well, catch this kind of exception and then do something with it. So if there's an exception, what you'd like to do, well, let's say, for example, in our case, what we're going to be doing is just display the error message. Or let's do error. Try again. So now, if I run it again, let me close this one and run. If I run it again and try to do something, press enter, it will tell me error, try again. Or if I click on this without anything, it shows me again error, try again. But notice it just did not change. Why? Because I'm not keeping what was before. I'm not doing something like this. Remember this thing, what did it do? It was just taking what was before and then adding something to it. So now if I do something like this and run it again, I press this, it's error again, press enter, error, try again, and so on. So this time it's going to do that. What was previously was this. Whatever was there, just remove what was in the text area and then write this. So if something that was there before is going to be removed. While what I'm doing here is keep what was there and add to it a new line and error. Yes? Can we do what? Restart? What do you mean restart? Yeah, if we do restart, well, it's going to choose another number for us, and it's going to, for example, if I do the restart, if I call the method restart, this restart, what it will do, it will just choose a random number and then put everything to 0, empty everything, and then put the attempts to 1 and then start with the number of attempts to be 0. This is the progress bar. This progress bar is this thing over here. This bar over here. I'll just make it back to 0. So it doesn't, and also notice something, in this restart, it just changed the value of the text field, text area. So it's going to, if I put it, for example, here, restart, where is it? I'm just lost. If I put it after, whatever I displayed is going to be removed. But if I want to use this restart, well, I should do it before. But then it doesn't make sense because it's an error. Why should I restart again? For example, if a user just by mistake he just started doing something and then he pressed enter, I don't want to start from scratch. Or he was about to find it, he just made a mistake, he pressed enter, and then he has to start again from the beginning. So it doesn't make sense to put the restart there. But if you want to be, well, you can count it if you want. Yes, if you count the error, you can count it as an attempt. Yes, and then But if you want to be really tricky and then trick the users, you can do something like, okay, if you make a minor mistake, start from scratch.
How can we do it?
By simply putting restart. This restart here.
I mean, to count the error message.
To count the error messages? Well, if you like to count them separately, you have to create a separate variable, and then every time you get inside here, you increment it.
In the same line.
What do you mean in the same line?
I involve the error message in the line.
I'm not sure what you want to do, so show me. Now, I'm running here, I'm doing something, for example, yes.
There is a line. Appear.
This here?
Yes.
Oh, but this is something, okay, let me remove this restart first and run it again. Now this is, if I do every time I do a verification, this is incremented by 1. This is the progress bar, which if I'm removing here, you can see that this number of attempts, you see this one here? This is the one that's calculated just to count how many attempts I'm doing. It starts from where? From 1, and every time there's an attempt, I'm going to increment it to 2, etc. Look at this one here. This is the PB attempt. How do I know that? Because if you right click here, and then you can see change the variable name just to be able to see what's the name of that variable. This is the PB attempts, because this is the progress bar attempts. In this one, I'm just using it to visually show where he is in terms of that. Look at this control over here. It has the maximum. I put 10 as the maximum, and then the minimum is 0, because it starts from 0. And now what happens every time I click on this check, this check is going to be verified, check number. Once I get here, the first thing that I'm doing after checking that he's not, congratulations, you find the number, is that either I display too low, too high, I'm going to increment the attempt. And once I increment the attempt, I put it in here. So now this, what we'll do, this will result in just making this bar grow. So that's what it will do, basically. But my point is here about this try catch. And now before we were doing this number format exceptions, this is something we were not using. We were doing something like this, exception. So why it doesn't matter? Because if you look at this number format exception, if you click on this one, this class number format exceptions extends illegal argument exception. Okay, this illegal argument exceptions extends runtime exceptions. Okay, fine. This runtime exceptions extends except. So let's go back to this. This base class for all exceptions is called exception, and then you can have all subclasses of this exception. That means you can always use upcasting, and when I'm doing something like this, if I catch a number format exception, it's going to be an exception because everything can be upcasted right to its superclass.
Like the object.
Exactly. So that's why if you don't want to be looking at the exact same different, exception, specific exception, then you're going to do something general for any kind of exception, regardless of what type of exception it is. Then you can use something like this, just exception. But sometimes you can have a piece of code that generates more than one type of exception. Let's say sometimes it can be this number format exception, or maybe a division by 0 exception. For example, this when divided by 0 is going to give you this division by 0 exception, or something related to that. I don't know exactly the name. So then if the division by 0 happens, you want to do something, or if there's something else, number format, you want to do something else, you can have something like this, for example. You can have more catches, but of course it has to be different type of exceptions. I don't remember exactly division by 0 exception, what kind of exception it is, but let's just...
There's no exception.
There's no exception? So it's just the general one is caught? I don't remember this. So what we're going to do, let's try this. What I'm going to do, just take this, remove it, and just do some kind of division by 0. Int 6 divided by 0. Of course, that makes sense. I need to put a variable.
You change the output. I said text because
Which one?
we know which exception.
Yeah, but I'm putting them both. Now, see, I'm having two types of exceptions. The one that is coming, okay, let me just put E here so we don't get lost with this. This number format exception, and there's an exception. So if there's an exception of this type, it's going to be caught by this catch over here. If it's an exception other than number format exception, it's going to be caught here. And I'm going to do something else. So let's say error. Let me do something like number exception, and here I'm going to say exception error. So I think this one is going to be, now if I do this, it's going to be showing me this exception error, because this is not about the number format exception. As soon as I press check it, I'm getting this exception error. So you can see this try catch. Usually we've just saw last time there's only one catch, one try, one catch. Actually we can have one try and then many different catches, each one for each type of exception that you want to do. But this is very special cases. If you have in one set of code like different type of exceptions that can occur. We might see some examples later about these things.
Can I make it restart automatically?
Restart what?
The, for the entering number, when I enter a number, it
Yes.
start to enter another number automatically. I don't need to press the restart button.
Yes, we can. We need to put the code of that restart button, because one of the things that we did is that instead of when we click on a button, for example, this button action restart button action performed, I'm just calling this method. So I put all the code of restart here. So every time I click on that button, this is what is executed. If I want to execute this thing without clicking on a button, I just need to call this method here whenever I want. For example, if you see here, when I'm starting in the constructor of the class, the first thing I do, as if I'm restarting, and I'm starting actually from the beginning, not restarting. So this serves also like some kind of initial value. So if I'd like to do it again, well, I can just come back here and do restart. You can see here. So that's why, for example, here I can say restart. Where am I restarting? In the else of this if. If the attempts are more than 10, which means I tried 10 times to find the number, but I couldn't, then it's going to tell me try again. But actually it should be a nice try again, because now it says me try again, and it doesn't even show me what was the number. I can say okay, the number was, I can put the number just to show the number. And what was my number? This is the random number. So now what this is going to do, I'm going to run. If I try like many times, and then actually not many times, 10 times, but to be more specific. Okay, after the 10 times, it will stop and tell me, okay, try again. The number was 71. But then by the time it showed me this, because before showing this code over here, it just restarted, which means 71 is no longer the number to look for, because if I check 71, oh, congratulations, I have found the hidden number. I was not expecting that. But how comes? Because I just did this random, I started again. This restart, it just shows a new number normally. So it's,
I think you have
Maybe it
to
shows 71 again.
to click the
but that was really, okay, let's do something. Let's try it again and pay attention to our numbers and see what is going to happen. Congratulations, I found the number. What is this? The numbers are too easy to find. Okay, 5, too low. Okay, that was weird. What happened there?
That was one shot into 10,000.
Okay, and then twice. It happened twice because I click 5 two times and it happened.
I think now you have to restart.
Now if I click 66, do you think it's going to show me that the number is there? Congratulations, it's there. But why does it give it me this? Yes.
I think because the random is still running.
No, it runs every time I just click on this. I call this method restart, then it runs.
I think it will choose another number if you click restart.
Let's just do something. Let's just click on this button here. I'm going to debug the project, and I'm going to be following the variables. What happened to them? Actually, I'm going to click on this to stop. Whenever this random is going to be calculated, I want it to stop there to let me see it, and then so I can know what is going on. Now, just to keep going, I'm just going to show whatever, keep going until the end. Now, this is going to show me, oh, it's calling restart. Why is it calling restart? Because actually this check number at 49, it went into the else, so the first thing it's doing, it's calling restart. Right? So it's going to restart now. So when it's going to restart, it's going to go here. Now, what was the number that I was looking for? Random number was 88. That was the previous number. Okay, remember this, because this is where we get things wrong. Now it's going to calculate this random number. This is the new random number, 98. So it empties now the text field has become empty. The results are going to become empty. The attempts back to 1, and then the set value, the progress bar is back to 0. Now after that, look what I'm going to display. Set text. Try again. The number was not 98. So I'm just displaying the new number and saying that it was the old number. That was not the old number. My problem is that I have to memorize the old number before I can create a new one, because this random number now, after calling restart, is the new number. So if I'd like to do that, I need to just do something like old number equal random number and now I'm just going to display the old number. Sorry? You got confused? Okay. Let me show you one thing. Before confusing you with this,
We took the method restart and put it in the line.
exactly, that's what I'm trying to do. If I take this and put it down here, now it's going to work. But you're not going to be fast enough to see it. Let me prove it to you. This, just put some numbers until we find it, and then pay attention. I'm going to type something, and what happened? Well, we displayed this, and then we went into restart, and restart just emptied it. It put an empty text field, so it displayed and was gone. Maybe in the video you can do some kind of zoom, even though you're never going to be able to see it because it's so fast that even the video frames are not quick enough to capture them. Let me show you why, by this time not executing this like that, but just by putting, before running this here, I'm going just to put this here. Before running the restart, I just would like to give me a time so I can see what's happening at this time, before running this line over here. I need to run it again with this, and let's do it again. And let's watch it. Okay, now you see something happened, and then I'm about to execute restart. Let's just have a look at what's in here. There's nothing because I don't have control, I'm not able to see it, but this is what is going to be displayed. You see, random number 85. So normally I'm going to see random number 85 because this TA, this is what it has, is this text field. It has as a, I don't know if I can have the get text, but not able to. This is too complicated. Yeah. Thanks for recording that. So this is not fast enough for us to see it, so I'm not able to display this to you because it's not going to show here, because now the frame is frozen waiting for me to finish executing this here. And now if I click on this get inside, I'll just run this restart. If I click on restart, now this is done. If you go back here, it's still frozen, so I need to finish this. Okay, now it's about to finish. Let me just finish this, and then you can see by the time it was displayed but then deleted. Why? Because, let me close this and come back to where I was, because when I'm calling this thing, it just displays something, and then immediately after that I'm just erasing it. How do I erase it? These lines erase it. So it's like I'm doing something like this. It's like I'm doing something like this, or even to make it even clearer to you, maybe it's like I'm doing I is equal to 5, and then I is equal to 0. So if I do this thing here, are you going to be able to see the 5? No, because immediately after putting 5 I will change it to 0, and then it's not fast enough for you to see it. The same thing that I'm doing here. Immediately after doing this, I'm going to display the restart, and this restart, I'm going to call the restart, and the restart, what it does, among the things that it does, it just put this to be empty. So what's the solution?
No meaning
If I want no mean what?
no meaning start there.
Yes, it will not show anything. It will not display anything. If I want to display something, I need to do the restart before. But before restarting, I would like to remember what was the old random number. By just remembering this random number, the value here is going to change inside this method. This random number is going to change here. How do I know that? That's the first thing that changes in this method, restart. The first thing that happens in restart, I'm changing this value of this variable.
What about can I give the user a message?
What kind of message?
Like
Like a window that appears? Yes, there's something that exists. It's called the message box. We can use that, but I don't want to go into that, because this is more, you have to think about gymnastically how to fix problems, and this is one way to fix this problem. The information is gone when we call this restart, so before calling the restart, let's just store it somewhere. And this is the rule that you have to do every time you need to remember something. You need to memorize something, create a variable, put that thing in it, and then you can use it later on. Which one I'd like to remember? The old random number. So okay, let's just put it in a variable. So I take this value here, what's inside of it, take it here, and then you can call restart. When I call restart, I don't care now if this random number changes, because I'm not displaying this new one, I'm displaying the old one. And this is how I can fix my problem of having this, that if it reaches the maximum, now it displays the old number, which means if I put 30, 30 is not the random one, it's a new one that is different. So I was not just being lucky, and 1 in a billion as we just thought, we're so lucky today, it's just we were not really paying attention. Okay, so let's get back to this. I want to show you then with this thing we can have actually this try catch. I can have it in different places. Let me show you something. Now if I do something like this, nothing forces me to use the try catch, because I'm using this in parse int, and actually this is part of something that avoids some kind of general exception handling, because as you can see, when the exception occurs, it did not stop the program. And this is because, look at the main. This main here is using something which, did you realize that it's not really what we used to call, how to call the methods. Now what I'd like to do is just to do this. this is what we used to do, right? When we wanted to make the window visible, we generated a new instance of that frame, and then we make it set visible to true. Or you're probably more comfortable with something like this, like this probably, and then I do something like this. No, just one dot is going to be enough. How about this? You're okay with this thing? So this is the same thing as, instead of saving this into a variable, I can just call it. I create an instance, but now this instance, if I use it, I need to make this visible to it, so I can just attach it to it. Or maybe, if to make it even more clear, imagine that this new one between parentheses, this is the new find hidden number, and that new find hidden number I can use the dots and set visible. The advantage, I don't need to save it. The disadvantage, if I need to change something else, I can't, because the object has been initialized. I did something with it, and then I don't have any way to go back to it.
Sorry, Doctor, what are you prefer? Like this or
What do I prefer? Well, it depends. If I'm just using this to show it and then I'm not going to be using it again, I use this one because it's much faster. If I need to use it again for something and then I need to refer to it again, I need to use the new, I need to declare a variable and put it inside of it. So it depends on the situation. Now what I'm trying to do is actually here. You see here, I would like to, those who are using my method here, I would like to force them to use it inside of some kind of a try catch. And to do that, I'm going to show you something. I'm saying that this method of mine that I just created, which is called check number, instead of when it works, this method can throw an exception. This method can throw an exception, which means, look, now I have some kind of red icon here, meaning that I have some mistakes in my code. And you can see that two mistakes are here. I click on these red lines and I can see, oh, here they are. And notice that they are all both related to check number, the method call. When I'm calling this method now, it tells me unreported exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. Which means that I have two options, like the abstract. Remember I did talk about the abstract? A method can be abstract. A class can be abstract. And then if a class is inheriting from the abstract class, it has to implement all interfaces or abstract methods, or become abstract. These are the two options. The same thing, this method here, this one, is calling a method that throws something. So this has two options. Either this should have some throws exception, but I cannot change it because NetBeans prevent me from doing so. Or this has to be surrounded with a try catch. I'm just trying to see, click in here. Oh, okay, there's no options. Not really, there's no overriding, this is about exceptions. Now this exception handling, I'm forcing those who are using this method to put it inside some kind of a try catch or to throw something. So now this is going to become a problem unless, let me just do it maybe this way, it will be faster. Unless if I select, I can surround with try catch. Now notice if I just surround with try catch, this is not complaining anymore. Why? Because I'm forcing those who are going to call this method to put it into a try catch, or they have to put it inside of a method that is going to be having the same throws exception as well. Let me show you a method that does that. Let me just do something. Call check number. So this is just a very simple method that doesn't exist yet, I'm going to make it private void call check number. And this call check number, what it's going to do, just do this. But this I cannot see. I can save, but it still gives me this problem. But look what happens. I can do throws exception, which means now this method here, if you want to use it, you have to. So this one here, I can use it either two ways. If I use it inside of a method, I can just put it inside of a try catch and do something about it. If there's a problem, let's say how TA result dot set text. I'm just going to put error because I don't want to do a lot of things. So this, now I'm just trying to show you what this throws does and what kind of implication it gives. This check number now, if you look at it, it did not have this. Now if I added this, I'm telling those who are going to use in this check number, they have two options. The first option, if you want to use it, they have to use it inside of a try catch. And the try catch has to be of some kind of the same exception that this is throwing, or it's a superclasses. Like this exception here. This is a superclass of all exceptions. What I can do, for example, is number format exception, and you can see now this number format exception, it can also be called inside of this exception, no problems. Or it can be called through this exception. So this is because number format exception is a subclass of exceptions. So if it's going to be catching an exception, it's going to catch every kind of different kind of exceptions. Yes.
In the inheritance, I use extend.
Yes.
In interface, implement.
Yes.
In exception, use throw.
Well,
Like this.
I need to use throws, but it's not about inheritance. Throws is about some kind of, you're forcing.
Exception.
It's like final. Okay, final for a method. What does it do?
For method,
Yes.
cannot change method.
You cannot change the method? What do you mean?
The variables inside
No. A final in a method means it cannot be inherited? No, it can be inherited, but it cannot be overridden. I cannot override it. Which means if you inherit this final method from another class, the superclass A has a final method called method1, which is final. This method1 you cannot have in your class that you're extending this class A. You cannot have a method called method1 that overrides this method1 because it's called final. So you cannot override it. So a final operator has some kind of implication. If it's in a method, if it's in a class, something different. An inheritance, you can have these two types of inheritance. The one that is from the class, which is having the extend. The one that's coming from the interfaces, you have to use implements, because you can use extend and implements at the same time. Because a class can extend another class and implement some interfaces, one or more. But here, this is not something related to inheritance or relationship between classes. This is just this method itself. This method. If I'm putting throws next to it, I'm saying if you want to use this method, you have two options. If you want to call this method, you can call it, but it has to be either inside of a try catch or inside of a method that throws that exception.
So you can take another way to catch the exception.
Another way to handle exception. Not the catch, because here I did not catch it, for example. I did not catch it here, but I have to catch it somewhere here, because you see here it tells me this call number, check number, is needing, it throws an exception, so you have to put some try catch here for it. So I'm just trying to show you like an example where what kind of options do you have. But actually in this case it doesn't make a lot of sense to do these kind of things, but I'm just using it as an example. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change this to, in my case, hold on. Oh. I just lost my changes, and okay, no problem. I'm going to go back in time. Okay, no, too far. Here.
I can
Now this makes more sense to me. Yes.
try catch and the second one.
What do you mean? Try catch or throws?
Yes.
Throws.